Yeah, the chapter on revolutionary feminist women in the Billington book has a section about the Saint Simonians where it says, quote, their first goal was to build a new type of family, which was the prerequisite for a new type of society. We were just reading in the famous James H. Billington book the argument about how if we wanted to renovate and redo all of society, the area that we would start is the family. That's the Saint Simonian revolutionary technique and target that they had. And they knew that because they understood if they could destroy the family unit and make it something part of the collective and part of the state, then you could have a supposedly new type of society, because the family is the first, quote, fascist institution to a lot of the Marxist socialists. And so that's the first area that you would have to target and destroy. And then we were getting into this element of witchcraft and the occult. So I'd like to move to that next. And then maybe in the next segment, we'll get into some of the more recent cases of elite funding and establishment for radical feminist organizations and groups and publications and whatnot. But they're talking about a new female messiah. That seems to evoke the idea of the goddess. And in witchcraft, probably the most fundamental element there is the goddess. She's really the focus of that religion. And a lot of these groups seem to draw, even if they're not explicitly religious, a lot of the feminist and radical movements seem to draw from the occult and from witchcraft because of this preeminence of the feminine principle, the goddess. I've read on medieval and late medieval and Elizabethan era witchcraft and Wicca and all that, where it arises from, European witchcraft. And the notion of the male principle being at war with the female principle and the witches choosing to sort of side with the feminine principle, that seems to be the logic of how it would be useful for feminist movements to pull from. How would you explain this to people? What is the connection between feminism and witchcraft?
Right. So the reason my book is called Occult Feminism, it's actually kind of a twofold meaning. One is that it's occult in the traditional sense of just meaning it's hidden. This history has been completely obscured and gatekept because women's studies programs starting in 1970, which were created by the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations and all the lovely folks associated with those entities, did not want relatively Christian America. We're talking 1970s suburban families, right, that they're trying to really promote feminism to at this time. They didn't want this history of it being bound up with things like theosophy and the occult to be well known, because Americans are going to reject that, right? Most of the normal family people are going to reject it. So most people don't know almost every suffragette you've heard of, almost every famous women's liberation activist from all the way from the beginning of the Revolutionary period through when suffrage was passed, and even after that, they were spirit mediums, fortune tellers, tarot card readers. They practiced various forms of witchcraft, theosophy, or occult magic. The Golden Dawn had its own female priestesses who were suffragettes, who were out marching and doing terrorist acts in England and in the United States as well. So there's an old saying that there was hardly a suffragette that didn't sit at the seance table,